Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Dungeons and Dopamine.
Hi! Welcome to episode 96 of Dungeons and Dopamine.
Hi.
Super good at this.
We're the best podcasters. I had a really weird thought today. It's not a weird thought. I'm sure it's a thought that we've both had already when we started podcasting. But what do you think it would be like if this podcast got big and we started having people approach us? I was listening to, surprise, I was listening to That's Why We Drink. And they had brought up, when they first started podcasting, how weird it was when suddenly they could tell that they were growing because people would approach them and be like, oh my gosh, aren't you so-and-so from such and such?
Ooh.
And I was like, if that happens, that's going to be weird. In a good way, unless they want to throw hands.
I mean, are you those bitches from that podcast?
Exactly. I hate you.
Stop making me laugh.
All your jokes are terrible. Sorry.
I mean, we did kind of have it at podcast last year, at Comic-Con last year.
A little
bit,
yeah.
We had, two people that came up and were like, oh, I listen to you guys.
We're not your friends.
And
we are now because you listen, but...
Right.
Now you're best friends with us, but... Yeah.
Now you're stuck with us.
And one of our friends... Leanne always jokes about how she feels like she knows way more about me than I do about her because she listens. And that just makes me laugh because everything I share on here, I would share with Leanne. And so it's great that she hears it. And strangers. No, they're all friends. They're all friends.
Right, sorry.
So I'm allowed to say, okay, love you, bye at the end of everything. So yeah, I just thought it'll be cool. That would be cool. It would be cool to be in a store. It will be
amazing.
Right. Dial that back. It's going to be really cool when it happens. Yeah, so that would be weird. Kind of cool. Weird. I'd feel guilty is what I was saying. I would feel like I should know them or have something witty or cool to say to them. I think I need to figure out a fact that I can just spout at them.
We gotta come up with elevator speeches for when people compliment us.
Exactly.
But did you know that some fireflies blink in synchrony down in the Smoky Mountains?
And they'll be like, yes, because I listened to your episode. Oh my gosh.
You're like, oh.
Shoot. That's Why We Drink also talk about how, unfortunately, they don't always remember their topics and stuff. So someone will ask them about something specific, like a case or a haunting, and they'll be like, I'm sorry.
I feel that way now already.
I know. Until it comes up in conversation, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I know everything about that. Let me be a jerk who takes over the whole conversation and ruins everything because that's what my topics do.
People are like, what kind of things do you guys talk about? And I'm like, I don't know. We've had almost 100 episodes, but I couldn't tell you a single topic. We've covered it all. But then other times people are like, so the other day I was thinking about the Winchester house. I'm like, oh, let me tell you about the Winchester house.
Yeah, I was flying into the Denver airport and I'm like, what? Did you see any of the blah, 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 blah?
Did you go in the underground tunnels? Did you see the artwork with the dead babies?
Did Lucifer get you? And they're like, they just back away.
Yeah. They're never as into it as I am. I don't understand why.
I was actually thinking, okay, so the coolest thing happened today. I'm looking for their TikTok right now because I want to give them a shout out. Okay, so Melissa, who is your sister-in-law, secret's out.
Yes. Surprise, surprise.
She's on TikTok, and it looks like it's Moms in a Subaru, which I already followed her, but I didn't know what the name was. She also goes by Melrose. That's correct,
that's
right?
Her pen name.
Yes. Okay.
for the book. She's published 2 books now.
Yeah, because she too is
They really
ADHD. So
one of her books is all about ADHD.
ADHD,
It's called like Penelope Has ADHD or something like that.
Yeah.
And she wrote the whole book and illustrated it. She
I didn't know she
taught herself how to
illustrated it.
illustrate on a tablet. Yeah.
Cool. I didn't know that.
She's incredible.
So she did a really, really nice TikTok about us today because she's doing Women Supporting Women for the month. And it was amazing. It was so, so nice. And I thought maybe we should hire her to be our publicist because she summed us up really, really well. I think it's kind of funny that you and I had so much fun last year at Con because we too, as much as we obviously talk here, we aren't like go out and meet people kind of people. We have friends that like will come to us and talk to us, but I had an amazing time. Granted, at the end of it, I was like, okay, my battery is depleted. I need to go
I'm
knock
gonna go
people.
hibernate for 4 days.
Exactly.
I instead went out that night and tried to be functional, and I made it until like, I don't know, 11 or 12, and then I was like, I'm not enjoying any of this anymore.
No.
Okay, bye.
I was really impressed that you even managed to go out because I came home and sat on my couch and played with my my dragon and my cow that I got. That's what my night consisted of. I probably ate something. We probably got food on the way home.
I'm sure you did.
The night before Con, because we go and set up that Friday before Con, we went and we set up and I had to work the whole day. So I came back. We went to a local restaurant and I tried to order a burger. And I kept trying to order the smaller size of the burger. It was like, okay, do you want a third or a half? Or quarter pound or a third or something like that. And I kept trying to order the smaller one, but not saying it right. And Ryan was staring at me, and the poor waiter, who was like a high schooler, was like, they were just staring at me. And, and I couldn't like get what I wanted out of my mouth correctly. Ryan was finally like, she wants the blah, blah, blah. And I just sat back and nodded and like, I felt shame.
You're like, I speak on podcasts regularly, but I cannot speak to you
and
right
I
now.
know if a third or a quarter or a half, I can't remember the size options. I know what's biggest and what's smallest. I can put them in order if you put them in front of me as fractions, but I'm tired. I don't know what to do. But it was really embarrassing. So I don't think I'll go to Russ's this year after we finish.
I think you should. I think it should be tradition now.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't for a
I
wedding.
hope it's the same waiter.
I do too. I hope we have all the same conversations until I order my burger. And then I'm going to be like, redemption. It's time.
Watch me order this professionally.
I want the 1/3 burger. You were like, okay, we also have the quarter. I want the smaller one, the 1/3. That's an exact reenactment of how it went. And the poor guy was like, but it's not smaller. 3 is smaller than 4, but when you put the 1 in the slash, it's not.
It's just the way math works.
Poor Ryan just stares at me for like 5 minutes while I'm trying to figure this out, and then finally understands what I'm actually asking for and does it for me.
And you're just like, yeah, somebody had to.
Exactly. And this is the person that I want people to approach in the airport and be like, I know you. I'm just going to be like, I'm really sorry.
You don't. I'm not that girl.
I'm going to hand them a business card that's like, Dungeons and Dopamine. We're so sorry.
There's a reason we edit these before they go out.
Yep. I'm glad you're here.
I made bookmark.
I made love. Oh, that sounds
These
dirty.
are bookmarks.
This isn't OnlyFans
I mean,
or After Dark.
I also made these bookmarks.
I love those. I do like the hearts, but I love those.
I figured you would. So these will be prizes at our booth at Comic-Con this year.
Woo, woo.
I love her.
Can't transition for you. Oh, yes, I can.
You can.
So my cat is not a great woman of history. She's
You don't know
an
that
idiot.
yet.
She still has time.
She could be.
No, she cannot.
She cannot. Do you know there are other amazing women in history that we do not often hear about?
Tell me more.
All right, I will. So this episode actually will release in April, but in true Brie fashion, I am coming in skidding at the last minute with some famous women, or not famous women in history for the month of March for Women's History Month. This was a lot harder than I thought it would be. So the problem is there are a whole bunch of amazing women that did not make it into the history books, even though they should have. And it was really hard to weed through all the stories and try to find ones that were interesting enough to talk about for the podcast without just talking about the same thing over and over. Because again, there are millions of women that have been ignored in history, and a lot of these women were just left out of history because they're women, and they existed at a time when women weren't allowed to be educated or weren't allowed to join organizations or go to college or have their own money or do anything really. And many of these stories were really similar, strong women that fought for women's rights or the rights of other marginalized groups, stories about women that made huge contributions to science or journalism or engineering. I have a list. I'm just going to go through them in no particular order. And
I like to think for the next 15 minutes, you're literally just going to read names. Just
yes.
Jennifer Smith, thank you. Glenda Morrison, thank you.
Thank you. You have to do your own research. I will give you the names. You have to go Google them yourself, okay? No, I do have brief snippets of information about these women.
Delightful. That makes it even better.
So the first one is Mary Anning, and she was alive from 1799 to 1847. I initially stumbled upon her because it was thought that she is the person behind the tongue twister "She sells seashells by the seashore."
You did good.
Which turned out not to be true, but it doesn't matter because she actually did have a cool story. So Mary Anning was an English fossil collector, dealer, and paleontologist, except she was never known as any of those things while she was alive. She eventually became known internationally for her discoveries. Her discoveries include the first correctly identified ichthyosaur skeleton when she was only 12 years old.
Holy cow.
2 nearly complete plesiosaurus skeletons, the first pterosaur skeleton, and then a whole bunch of fish fossils. Of course, as a woman, none of this is published under her name because essentially she was born to a poor family that lived on the coast and they would find fossils. So her dad was a fossil collector, her brother was a fossil collector. I don't know, I guess I didn't realize this, but especially when you're looking for fossils along the coast, this can be kind of a dangerous job.
Really?
The tide is always moving and there's rock falls and landslides and all kinds of stuff. So starting in the beginning, when Mary was only 15 months old, she was being held by a neighbor who was standing under a tree with 2 other women. So 3 women and one was holding baby Mary. A storm rolled in and the tree was hit by lightning and all 3 women were hit by lightning and all of them died. Mary was rushed home where she was revived in a bath of hot water. Her family said before that she had been kind of a sickly baby, but after the event she seemed to blossom. She was very smart, she was very lively, curious, intelligent. Then she went into the fossil business with her family. So her dad collected fossils, her brother would help, her mom was maybe not doing well health-wise and kind of tended the home. But they would go out and find all of these fossils and then they would sell them. They had a little shop in their house and basically like geologists and paleontologists would come and buy fossils from this family and then they would go publish like scientific journals about the fossils that they had gotten. So eventually Mary's dad dies and her brother has to become the breadwinner and he becomes an upholsterer. So Mary takes over the family fossil business. Throughout her life, she never made a ton of money on this, but now we know she is actually credited with discovering the fossils of these species. It just bums me out. Like she never had any money, but these men would come in and they would buy her fossils and they would go make huge amounts of money and like scientific discoveries over her discoveries. So a couple of times, like one guy realized that the family was in hard times and decided to help out, so he actually took all these fossils that he had bought from her and auctioned them off to museums and different places that would study them to raise money for the family. And he raised like $400 or 400 pounds, which would be like 40,000 pounds nowadays, which was great. But again, he was still getting all the credit for her work. And then another guy, they were friends, and he would use her fossils and her discoveries to create artwork.
Oh, cool.
And so he made a bunch of money off this artwork, off her discoveries. And so eventually he also picked a particular print or piece of artwork that he had done and had lithographs made out of it. And then whatever money he made off the lithograph prints that he sold, he gave to Mary. Finally, towards the end of her life, one friend convinced the British Association for the Advancement of Science and the British government to award her an annuity known as a civil list pension in return for her many contributions to the science of geology. So she was given a 25-pound annual pension to make up for all of these discoveries she had made that she never got credit for.
How old was she when she passed away? She was born in 1799.
She was 47. One weird part of the story, there was an anonymous article written about her life published in 1865 in a Charles Dickens magazine. It was initially thought to have been written anonymously by Charles Dickens, but then they later found out it was actually written by a man named Henry Stuart Fagin.
Oh, weird.
And yeah, then history again went through all of his notes and decided that his story that he had written about her life was actually not original or reliable and had a bunch of errors in it. Mr. Fagin was not a great biographer. He had at least ended the article with, "The carpenter's daughter has won a name for herself and has deserved to win it." So she died when she was 47, basically penniless and with nobody knowing that she had actually made all these discoveries. But now we know that she exists, and there have been plays written about her, movies, books. They have ceremonies that recognize her, or women that contribute to science. And then one biologist or paleontologist or somebody actually named a couple of fish skeletons after her.
Okay.
So she did eventually get some glory, but first it was stolen by all the men.
Thank you, Mary. That's how we're going to end these. Thank you, Mary. Not, yes. I mean, if that's not their name, we won't say Mary, but we'll thank them.
Thanks for clarifying.
You got it. At the end of the episode, we're going to say, thank you, Bree. Thank you, Jessica.
Yes. The next amazing woman, this is Sybil Ludington, and she is the female Paul Revere. So she was born in 1761 and died in 1839. But on the night of April 26th, 1777, 16-year-old Sybil Ludington rode nearly 40 miles to warn some 400 militiamen that the British troops were coming.
Nay!
So even though we know the story from Paul Revere, who ran through the town saying, "The British are coming, the British are coming, nay!" There was a 16-year-old girl named Sybil Ludington who actually was less than half Revere's age and rode more than twice as far to carry her warning.
I know,
and she was
girl.
personally thanked by George Washington.
Yes, that's awesome. 16,
Isn't that awesome?
That would be so scary at 16. I could barely drive us to the movies at 16.
Much less warn people that the British were coming.
Seriously. Nay.
Then I have Jane Addams.
Wait. Thank you, Sybil.
Oh, thank you, Sybil. Thank you for warning us about the British.
Yes.
Next, we have Jane Addams. She was alive from 1860 to 1935. And this one might be a little more common. Some people may have heard of her. She is considered the mother of social work.
Oh,
so
nice.
She and her friend, Ellen Gates Starr, traveled to England and were inspired by Toynbee Hall in London, which was a special facility to help the poor. So when they moved back to the United States, they moved into Chicago and began the Hull House. So the Hull House provided a place for immigrants of diverse communities to gather. So they helped immigrants, they helped women, but as a person in general, Adams went on to sponsor legislation to abolish child labor, establish juvenile courts, limit the hours of working women, recognize labor unions, make school attendance compulsory, and ensure safe working conditions in factories. She also wrote and lectured openly about opposing World War I, and then eventually founded the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom.
That's cool.
So lots of cool stuff there.
What was her? Jane, right?
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank you, Jane. The next one is Sally Ride. She's a little more recent. She was born in 1951 and passed away in 2012.
Oh.
She was the first American woman to ever go into space, being the third woman ever to go into space. And she flew on the Challenger in 1983. She was also the first known LGBTQ astronaut. She was a lesbian and had a woman life partner for all of her life. She was on one of the Challenger space voyages. She also helped with like the calculations and the communication for a couple of the other Challenger space voyages. And because she was so involved in all of the Challenger space voyages, she actually helped investigate the Challenger explosion. She was very instrumental in that investigation. After Sally Ride left NASA, she served as a director of the California Space Science Institute, and all of the stories said that she was very involved in helping young women go into STEM fields. So any women that were interested in ever going to space or being an astronaut or any sort of STEM field, she would basically drop everything and meet with them and encourage them. She also authored a bunch of children's books and was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which President Obama awarded to her and gave to her life partner. And then she was also given a Barbie. They made a Barbie out of her,
nice.
Or made a Barbie of her in 2019. So I thought that was
That
awesome.
is cool.
Right along the same lines, we have Judith. Sorry. Thank you,
Sally.
We also have Judith Love Cohen, who was born in 1933 and passed away in 2016. This was another American aerospace engineer. So she helped with the Hubble Space Telescope, the Tracking and Data Relay Satellite, and also the Apollo space program. So she actually helped write the abort guidance system, which is credited for helping save Apollo 13 and get all of those astronauts back safely. She's also very exciting because she is actually Jack Black's mother.
What?
So there is an internet kind of meme going around right now that says that she saved Apollo 13 while she was in labor with Jack Black. That is a little bit stretched because the Apollo 13 rescue happened in I want to say April or August of 1970, but Jack Black was born in 1969. So the actual story is that she was in the hospital having Jack Black and had brought work with her and was calculating things and working on the Apollo 13 flight, but only the calculations to get them there, not working to save them while the catastrophe was happening.
By the way, what? And working
right?
While you're in labor, I can't even imagine
how to get these calculations done. She, the story says she finished the calculations and she called her boss and was yeah, I'm sending them over to you right now. And oh, boy, I had a healthy baby, which is just wild.
Amazing.
After she retired from being involved in the space program, she also founded a children's multimedia publishing company and eventually published more than 20 titles before she died.
So she's amazing. So we can see why Jack Black is so cool. His mom was incredible.
And I guess Jack Black has a half-brother who is a computer scientist and engineer that is relatively famous. His name is Neil Siegel. She is also his mother.
Nice. That is so cool.
So thank you, Judith.
Thank you, Judith.
Both for saving Apollo 13 and having Jack Black.
And being a freaking genius. Just throwing that out there.
And writing children's books and all kinds of stuff. The next one is Hedy Lamarr, and she was born in 1914 and passed away in 2000. And she is most known for actually being a glamorous film actor. And her life started off really hard. I think I don't remember what country she was from originally, but she immigrated to the United States and became a very famous actress. Her early films, when she was still in the other country, were considered erotic, and she was kind of looked down on for that.
Yep.
And
Especially
again,
then,
you know, early 1900s, so I don't know how erotic it actually was.
Right.
Versus
She showed her
what
ankles.
we would consider that today. Right.
Unlike our OnlyFans.
So she was
we don't actually have an OnlyFans. Just we
Yet.
don't have an OnlyFans.
Yet.
Right.
So she was a glamorous, beautiful film actress, but she also helped invent the basic GPS technology that we use today. So along with a composer named George Antheil, they developed radio frequency hopping as a radio guiding system for American torpedoes during World War II. So this was way ahead of its time and eventually was used in the 1960s, and she is considered the mother of Wi-Fi.
Sweet.
But because she was not a U.S. citizen at the time, and, you know, because she was a woman, she was not put on the patent for this invention, and she was never done any of her work before she died.
Of course.
This is the last one I have for today, but, sorry, going back, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Hetty. Yes.
Without Hetty, we would not have the GPS technology that gets me to all of my showings relatively on time. Probably will continue this topic in future weeks, just because, like I said, there was so many stories that I could have gone into, and I kept just getting distracted by trying to piece out the cool stories. None of the summaries mentioned how Mary from the first story had been struck by lightning when she was 15 months old. Like, I really had to dig for that, but it made it a lot harder to write this episode.
Oh, I can only imagine. Yeah.
So the last one I have is Victoria Claflin Woodhull, and she was born in 1838 and died in 1927. She is an American leader of the women's suffrage movement who ran for president in the United States in the 1872 election. So she was actually nominated by the Equal Rights Party, and Frederick Douglass was nominated as her vice president, even though he never officially accepted the nomination. So before women even had the right to vote, this Victoria Woodhull ran for president, like had a party that nominated her to be a presidential nominee. I do want to express a little bit of anger that our first woman presidential nominee was back in 1872, and we have still not seen a woman president.
Right.
But that's a whole different story. Some stories accept that she would have actually been too young to run for or to be elected president at that time, according to the Constitution. But, you know, small details. It doesn't seem to matter to most of us anymore.
The gall to do what she did, like, you know, that's right. Amazing.
And she came from like a really horrific background. Her parents were her mom was uneducated, could not read, just not a great mom, and her dad was a really abusive, terrible person. He was actually a snake oil salesman and was very abusive to Victoria and her brothers and sisters. But somehow this woman she built two fortunes. Her first fortune was actually built on basically snake oil sales. And she built a fortune off, I think one of the stories said it was like off the back of
Rex is very passionate about this.
He is. He's very passionate about Victoria. So she basically took a bunch of money from one of the Vanderbilts for this magnet medication that she had. So she built her first fortune that way and eventually lost it all, and then started on this path to president. And her sister, before she was even nominated for president, her and her sister were the first women to open a woman-owned stock brokerage on Wall Street. And they specifically helped women try to learn and get involved in the stock market and help them protect their money from their husbands, because back then women didn't have any rights for money, and your husband could just come take it and say it was his. So she did all of that, opened the stock brokerage with her sister, built a fortune off that, again with the Vanderbilts, like made a bunch of money off them in the stock market. All of this happened despite her awful upbringing and the fact that she only had 3 years of formal education.
Holy cow.
And was married the first time at the age of 15 to some abusive jerk, and then divorced him and eventually married another man who was an alcoholic that cheated on her all the time. She's also not well known, but she's also known for kind of being a proponent of free love, which wasn't necessarily like the 60s movement.
I was going to say, that's so far before her time.
Right. But it was more that she didn't believe the government should be involved in marriage or children. So you should be able to marry whoever you want, or leave whoever you want, or be with whoever you want, and the government shouldn't be involved with it. She opened the stock market, or the stock brokerage, built a fortune, got nominated for president. She did not win. And they think part of the reason she didn't win, besides being a woman, is because her and her sister also used their money to start a newspaper. And they would write things that were considered, feminism topics or other taboo topics. She got in big trouble because she, as part of her movement of free love and not believing that the government should be involved, she wrote a rather scathing article about a local preacher and how he had a side piece basically and was cheating on his wife, and
she called him out.
And called it out, and she was actually arrested I think the night of the presidential election because of her lewd newspaper. So she was in jail during the election and didn't end up being elected. And I think that was part of the reason that she was never elected president. She did actually run, or try to run 2 more times, and nothing ever came of it, obviously. But she had some kind of bad worldviews that it gets into, but the upbringing like that and a life like that,
and the time period,
all right.
I mean, the time period too. Well, thank you, Victoria.
Thank you, Victoria.
Wow, that's so cool. I love it. Well, your topic is super cool and had a bunch of baller women. My topic has a woman. She's fine.
I'm scared.
She's fine. You should be.
Yay!
You will be. So I had a hard time with my topic. The last few weeks I've had a hard time with my topics, just like being motivated to keep looking into a topic. But it seems like there's always just one that's like, that's interesting. I want to tell you what caught my eye. Sometimes I go to ChatGPT a lot and I'm like, yo, I can't think of a topic. Can you help me come up with something? GPT.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, and actually it keeps track of what I've talked about before. Like if I tell it I'm going to do a topic, it'll be like, hey, don't forget you did this topic already, which is cool.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And I don't even pay for it.
I'm not using AI nearly as much as I should be.
I went to ChatGPT and it gave me a lot of things that you would normally see on like a list of, I said like folklore or spooky stories or true crime, and it was kind of the list that you would expect, like Jeffrey Dahmer and Robert the Doll and Annabelle. And then it said the Tallman bunk beds. And I was like, please tell me more.
Not sure I would have chosen that.
Not
sure that would have been my response.
I'm like, excuse me? And so I would like to tell you about the Tallman bunk beds. They were 2 beds. One was on top of the other.
And they were tall.
They were made of mahogany. That's all. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay, love you, bye.
Okay, love you, bye. Alan and Debbie Tallman, they lived in Wisconsin. They had bought a new home. They were really excited about it. It was kind of a new subdivision and just a small town. They had never owned a home before, so they were stoked about it. They had 1 son and 1 daughter, and Debbie was pregnant with their second daughter. Now, I have no names. They kept their children's names out of everything, out of like respect for their children's privacy, which I can actually big respect.
Nice
I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
So when I refer to them, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but it's going to be like the boy or girl 1 or girl 2.
Daughter 1.
Exactly. So they move in, and they knew with their other daughter coming that they were going to need furniture. So they saw the opportunity to get a cheap used bunk bed. And they did, and they popped it down in the basement.
As you do.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. There's no information about where exactly they got it, whether it was a secondhand store or a friend or just someone on the side of the road or a wanted ad, which this was in 1987. So wanted ads would have been a whole thing, or like freebies or whatever in the paper. So they went and they found it. They put it in the basement. The previous owners of this house had lived there for 18 months, which is just sort of an interesting fact, I guess, to file away. I don't know that it really has anything to do with it, but just something. Debbie kind of saw this as her like American dream home, the white picket fence, the 2.5 kids. So when they moved into the house, they noticed that their formerly pretty healthy family started to get sick more often. Debbie herself ended up getting the chicken pox and a bunch of ear infections. And then Alan started to have really bad back pain, which they had just moved also. So, but
I get back pain from moving too.
I get back pain from existing now that I'm almost 40.
Right?
They started thinking, okay, is there mold or something in the house? And they brought in an inspector who checked out the house and said, no, it's in good shape. It was pretty new still, only a few years old. And he said, you know, everything looks good. You don't have lead paint. You don't have asbestos. We don't see any mold. You're good to go.
Which is great for any house.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I prefer my house without debilitating substances and stuff. But the dad, Alan, he kind of started to binge drink occasionally in the house. He said it was making him feel kind of down. You know, being there, the house, the atmosphere. So he started binge drinking.
They're sick all the time.
Yeah, exactly. He's got pain. So started to binge drink, and that they kind of just mention it and then gloss over it. But it is something I want to bring up because I feel like this is something we are going to want to discuss in a little bit. Because we are going to want to discuss this.
Great.
I hope you're taking notes because I have my whiteboard off to the side. I'm going to pull it over.
We're pulling into the screen.
It's got pins with red ribbons going to aliens. Guests were coming over. Of course, the new house. You have people over. You want to show them the house and everything. And even Debbie's mom, they kind of just said, like, the house doesn't... I don't want to really be here. They started to notice like their guests petering off. They weren't having people come over as often. And then when Debbie went into labor, she was put on basically bed rest and then went into labor, and her mom stayed with them while that was happening. She would come over and take care of the other two children. And then eventually, yay, third daughter was born. We love that. Yay. She was healthy. It was great. The timeline is a little skewed here. I think really this is a period of several years, but it's just these small bits of things that happened in these years, so I can't tell you the exact timeline of this. But after the baby was born, they did go out on a date, Alan and Debbie, just because they had 3 kids now, and she had just had a baby, and like...
You should do that.
You should do that. Yeah, it's a lot. He'd been drinking. I mean, it's a lot. So
sometimes he likes to drink outside the house.
Exactly. Why not? So when they got home from their date, which reportedly went fine, the babysitter was waiting for them at the door. She was like panicked. And they asked her what happened, and she said she and the little boy had been playing at the table. They were playing a board game. And they started to hear like tapping noises. And then suddenly, slowly the tapping turned into banging. And then they looked down to the end of the table, and the chair that was there started to rock. And then eventually lifted up off the ground and slammed down onto the ground.
What?
Yep. And then I'm sure that babysitter never came back. It makes me think of the one that babysitted Jack in The Incredibles.
Right?
They never saw her again.
I mean, what are the chances that your haunted house is going to start acting up while the babysitter's there?
Right.
That's not fair.
Right. Well, and you wonder because tapping noises, I always attribute it to like my animals or an animal or something. Right. So you wonder, were they hearing it and not realizing it? But anyways, I digress. The girls were at this point getting old enough that they could both sleep in a regular bed. So this is why I think years have gone by in between some of these stories. Mm-hmm. So they brought the bunk beds up from downstairs, and the girls moved into the big bedroom, and the boy, he moved into the small bedroom. And everyone was excited. You know, new change, very exciting. The parents
new room, new beds.
Yes.
Yay.
Slumber party. The little boy, he had a clock radio in his room that he liked to listen to at night to help him fall asleep. White noise. The first night, they plugged it in, they turned it on, they went to bed, and he came into their parents' room and he said, radio station keeps changing. And so they went back in the room and they fixed it and they tucked him back in and they went to bed, the parents, Alan and Debbie. Then they heard him crying, like weeping. I think it was Debbie, had gone back into his room and asked him what was wrong, and he said he saw the dials on the radio change themselves.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, super great.
He loved that.
He loved that. He also, along with this, started saying things like there was a sleeping bag that stayed under his, or a sleeping, no, rewind, a suitcase not a sleeping bag, a suitcase that was under his bed. And it would just come out at night, like someone had pulled it out from under the bed. One night, he ran to his parents' bedroom and said that it had shot across the room, like someone flung it. In anger, his dad finally went in, ripped the clock radio out, took the suitcase out, and said, okay, we should be done now. Because they kind of chalked it up to like a kid having nightmares.
He doesn't want to go to bed,
Yeah.
so he's making up stories.
Got a new,
whatever.
new sister. He moved into a new room. Like, things are unsettled for him,
Yeah.
At this point, the girls started to have trouble sleeping. They kept waking up and crying and say that they could hear things. This is where it gets fun. One night,
Oh, no.
Debbie heard, well, overnight, Debbie would sometimes hear her older daughter talking. And she thought maybe she was sleep talking, but finally realized she wasn't sleep talking and asked her, who are you talking to? Which, just don't do that. If your kid's talking to something in the middle of the night, just leave it alone. Pretend it's not happening.
That's rule number 1.
And she said that she's talking to the witch with red eyes that goes behind the door when you and Daddy come in my room.
Oh.
So I don't know if Debbie
Cool.
looked behind the door, because I don't know if I've got goosies just talking about it.
I'd be like, oh, that's nice for you, honey. I'm going to go now.
Enjoy.
Tell her to be nice.
Exactly. At this point, Debbie started to have experiences. She would hear the garage door open when she was home alone. She had heard it enough times that the neighbor had to come over a few times to check the house to make sure that there wasn't someone coming in. Alan was not yet having any experiences. And
just hates his whole family at this point.
right? That's why
You guys are all crazy.
Exactly. They did occasionally bring in like the rare exterminator or something because of the noises and things. They're like, well, there must be mice in the walls. There must be animals trying to get in. There must be something. So they would bring them in on occasion and they would find nothing, of course. I think once they did find mice, but then after that, nothing.
And that doesn't explain anything.
Exactly. Alan was at one point working to paint a room. It was going to be a man cave, and he was called upstairs to eat with the family. He set his paintbrush on the edge of the table so that the bristles were sticking out so that they wouldn't get paint on the table, and left it there to go upstairs and get dinner. Came back down to finish up, and the paintbrush was upside down in the paint bucket. So the handle was in the paint bucket. The bristles were sticking out. And he got it and he cleaned it up. He was kind of like, what the heck? I know I set this on the table. So he takes it, he goes to clean it up, and out of the corner of the eye, he kind of notices a dark shadow figure. But he just moved on. He just chalked it up.
That's fine.
Paint fumes, huh? And then one day, he went down to the basement, which is where he was painting, and an entire window was removed. Like a whole window. You know how you rough in a window, like, then you trim it out and everything, it looks nice and finished? It was out, not the glass.
It's just gone.
The window. And it was
the whole frame.
It was sitting on the floor in their basement. And nothing said it was broken or anything. It was just sitting there. So, of course, then they called the police. They brought the police in. They checked the house. Found nothing.
Somebody took our window out.
Right. They assumed someone had broken in, It's really strange. Now, this was a basement that was unfinished, and he was finishing to be a man cave. So there's a very good chance that it wasn't trimmed out and in well.
Still.
Very suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
This was when Alan maybe started thinking there's something strange going on. They thought maybe someone was lurking around the house. So then that's when they called the police and blah, 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 blah. Alan's mom watched the children one night. She dozed.
Because they couldn't get any babysitters.
Exactly. So she put the kids to bed, and she went and sat on the couch and dozed off. She woke up and said she didn't know what woke her up, but she looked at the window and saw a figure with glowing green eyes with red pupils, which corresponds with what the girls were saying they were seeing with the figure with red eyes, which, she said green pupils. They might have just, maybe they were focused on the red. The green isn't as startling. She told Alan and Debbie this, and they said, oh, it was probably a car just reflecting lights off of. But this is also the point when the boy began complaining about a hag coming into his room who had red eyes. And she would come in as a cloud and then form into the figure of a hag. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not even the worst part. She would form into a hag and then threaten to burn their house down.
Oh. Just a little detail there.
Just a small one. Just to to make you
No
want to...
big deal.
Yeah, I'm very uncomfortable right now. This is going on. I imagine Alan and Debbie are having very bad nights. Like, I guess one of them had to go into the girls' room until they fell asleep every night and wait till they were sleeping, which we all know is really fun with kids because they love to sit there and chat at 10 o'clock at night. So,
my favorite.
Yeah. So I suspect they're not having the best time. So one night, Alan reportedly got really mad and screamed out into the void of his home, "Come get me. Why are you messing with my family? Come at me." I agree with that completely.
We know better.
Yeah, we don't invite. The Fae are not allowed in unless they're named Rhysand with wings. And even then we discuss it first.
Yeah, there'd have to be some ground rules. We don't just invite spirits in or unknown anything.
Or challenge them.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
That very night, he went into the garage and said he felt something pull a book right out of his hand. They finally called their family pastor because, duh. He came in.
Maybe start there.
Right? He came in. He put a blessing on their house. It didn't work. Spoiler. Sorry.
Oh.
That would be a really boring story. Like, okay.
It would be a weird ending for you.
Especially when
and then the priest came and he blessed the house and then it was over. The end.
They loved the bunk beds are still there. The children still sleep on them. Alan came home from work one night and he had a lunchbox in his hand and he got out of his car and he heard like strong wind. He heard and felt strong wind, but there wasn't wind. There was no blowing or anything. But is that kind of like howling if something's going through a small space and you kind of hear almost whistling? It happens in my garage. It's a really, like if it's really windy outside,
creepy.
It's because it's so big and kind of empty at the top. Yeah, it's very eerie. Kind of cool, but very eerie. And he then heard a voice on the wind say, "Come here." And it repeated itself. It said it twice. And so he did. Come here.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good choice.
As he moved forward, he looked into the garage and saw fire in his garage, as well as a figure standing in the middle of the fire with red and green eyes. We love consistency.
Just a car. Just
a car.
a reflection.
Just a car. He went to go grab something to put the fire out because, like, my garage is on fire. This isn't good. And when he came back, the fire was gone. There was no fire. There was no, what is the word I'm looking for? No proof that the fire had ever been there. There wasn't scorches or smoke or anything like that. The family also reported at this point hearing doorknobs rattling, windows shaking, all of the, like typical ooey ooey.
Ghosty.
Yeah. We're going to gloss past it. So,
totally normal things happening.
Exactly. So one night, Alan went into the girls' room to lay in there while they fell asleep. And he heard that same howling that he had heard the day when he saw the figure in the garage. And he looked around and fog started to roll in on the floor. And it turned into a figure who told Alan, "You're dead."
Oh, she's escalating now.
Yes. So they left the house that night, but came back.
You're apparently creeping Rex out too.
I'm sorry, Rex. I don't blame you. So they left that night. They came back, of course. It's their home. I know that sometimes I'm like, why wouldn't they just leave? But then I think about leaving my house and I'm like, it's just not that easy. It's not packing up and going.
Yeah, right. It would have to be.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want to think about how bad it would have to be.
Right.
So when they did come back, they brought the pastor again because it worked so well the first time. He blessed the house again, and they had a couple of days of peace. So Alan had to work. I think he had to work either on a trip away or just overnight, like a night shift thing. And he asked either... Some of the stories I read said brother, and some of them said nephew. But he asked either his brother or his nephew to stay the night with the family. It was a grown man, basically, is what I take away from it. Debbie asked the brother or nephew to sleep in to wait in the girls' room until they fell asleep because she had to something. She probably just didn't want to.
She's like, I hate that room.
Exactly. I hate this house. Suddenly, she started hearing the brother, we'll just say brother, screaming. And the girls started screaming that they could see it. And reportedly, Debbie went to the hallway and started yelling to them. what do you see? What's going on in there? But she didn't want to go open the door, which it's your kids, but at the same time, I'm like, what does fear do to you? Yeah. And you know they're in there with an adult, but I do feel like my kids' screams would probably really propel me, but you can't know until you're in the situation.
I don't know, if Zach was in the room already.
Oh yeah, sure.
I probably wouldn't need to go in. But if it was fair. Like Matt in there with Connor and Connor was screaming, I would like to believe that I would go running in.
The big thing is that Matt would have also been screaming in this situation. So he was also terrified. So that might be part of why. Like, you're instinctively, you go to your kids, but then there's an adult in there screaming, which when adults scream, your body goes, no, we stay away from that. That's a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Stay out here.
So it's hard to say. So that night, after this happened, they collected the children and they left, and they never went back to that house ever. That was the last night. They do a podcast, but I watched it on YouTube. It was a great one, and I should tell you guys the title of it before I end the episode. They said that they went back that night in the car, not to go inside, and all of the lights in the house were on, though they had not turned on any of them.
The ghostly witch lady was like, I won! They're gone!
I can have the electrical bill as high as I want. Something strange about the Tallman family is that they refused media interviews. They did eventually allow this to be an Unsolved Mysteries episode, but they were like witness protection out.
Really?
So you couldn't see them. And they insisted that any recreations be done by actors. Their family was not to be involved. And then, of course, I mentioned they didn't want their children's names out there, which is why I've called them boy and daughter and girl. And the house did sell. It did sell at a loss. The new owner of the house said they never had an issue, not once. The family burned the bunk beds, and they never had trouble ever again after that.
Oh.
So,
how did they connect it to the bunk?
I'm not sure. I don't know if it's just something that people have come up with. Like, oh yeah, you bought used furniture. Of course it's bad. I don't know.
Right.
But
because it was like primarily happening in the girl's room where the bunk beds were.
Well, in the boys' room, because he would go tell her, or she would go tell him would go tell him that it was going to burn the house down. But the other thing that a lot of their neighbors, remember I said this was kind of a small town, a lot of the people in this town claimed that the Tallman family were a bunch of drunkards, which, okay, we did hear that he was binge drinking. Does that mean he's a drunkard? We don't know. However, if the family has issues like that, it would explain a lot of what happened. Like, yeah, hauntings explains everything. Straight up, it explains everything.
Right.
But if you take some of the specific examples that they give for the hauntings, like, well, for one, the pain in Alan's back. You just moved. The children getting sick, the mom getting chicken pox, which, by the way, in 1987, we didn't have a cure for the chicken pox. We just got them.
Right.
And then you went around all your friends and family so that they would get them. All the children would get them, and then you'd all be good. But it's a new school.
You can only get chickenpox once.
Yep. Except me. I got it twice because I'm special. But
you are special.
I love that for me. But, kids starting a new school, not only are they in a fresh place, but they're in a new home. They've been a little stressed because they've moved. They have a new sibling on the way. Their mom's in bed. Mom can't get up and help and play with them. Dad might be a drunk. He might be a mean drunk. Mom might be a drunk. She might be a mean drunk. It explains away a lot of it. And then you have the window coming out. Did he go downstairs in a drunken stupor and remove the window because he was repairing it? Did he drop the paintbrush into the paint thinking he left it on the table because he was too drunk to know?
Or he thought he left it on the table, but it was too close to the edge.
Exactly. The other thing that this was something that podcast I watched brought up was having family and friends start sort of breaking up with you, where they're not coming around as often, can happen if they feel like your family, like, if you came over and Ryan and I were always bickering, actually bickering. Yes, Ryan and I are always joking with each other, but we're not actually bickering. It would be very awkward. Right. Or if you notice that he treated our child really badly. That's, especially in the 80s, you didn't say something. You just left.
Right. And that's their business now.
Exactly. And the boy making stories up about ghosts or hags or... Well, he started to say it, then the girls started saying it, and then the girls were getting attention. They especially got attention when they talked about this hag. So I'm going to talk about this hag. Mm-hmm. Doesn't explain the grandparents seeing things or feeling uncomfortable.
And the babysitter.
Yes, yeah. So there's things you could explain away if the kids are in a trauma situation. It's very easy to believe they could come up with anything. But then it's also very scary.
I mean... I come from a long line of alcoholics.
Right.
And we had ghost stories, but we did not have those types of ghost
right.
stories.
Exactly.
We're like, oh, the bread was on the floor when we got home to Ben Kling. Not like, oh, there's a demon witch hag with red glowing eyes in my room.
Yeah, it's very, very terrifying story. I only like the... like writing it off kind of thing because it makes me feel better about myself.
Right.
Like it makes me feel like I can go to bed tonight by myself without having, well, I won't be by myself, but I could go if I wanted to. And so it's a really crazy story. Very believable that it could have been a very screwy family. They could have been making these stories up to hide things. They could have been traumatized children trying to make their childhood seem more normal. But then after this, they went back to normal. They just went...
Like, they left the house, they burned the bunk beds, nothing else ever... They went on Unsolved Mysteries, but they didn't want to be famous about it.
That's the other thing.
They blocked their face. They didn't talk about the kids. Like, not like they were out for millions of dollars. Exactly. They weren't, like, looking for Oprah to give them a book deal or anything.
They were the Warrens, I think they were. I think M from That's Why We Drink did a whole series on the Warrens. They were like ghost hunters. And everything they did was huge popular. Like they were out there doing stories all the time. They could have called them. They could have called anyone in and said, hey, you guys want to see this? Check this out.
Yeah, we've got a hag.
Yeah, there's so much we just don't know. And I get the gross
That's
shivers.
Almost as terrifying as the mongoose.
I know, almost. Jeff is... ugh. Jeff was mean. I mean, I guess this was too, but Jeff wanted to, like, pretended to be nice sometimes and then was mean. And I think that's even scarier.
Right. Plus, mongooses should not be so terrifying.
Right. They're cute and fluffy. Not fluffy, but fuzzy.
Right.
Anyway, that's the story of the Tallman bunk beds. And that is how I, thank you, ChatGPT, for that. For, you all can go
Thanks, ChatGPT.
Everyone can go visit ChatGPT and thank them for this. Like, I always call it him. I always think it's a him, obviously.
I like the idea that ChatGPT is about to get a bunch of, like, what the hell?
Thanks a lot, jerk.
Why would you tell Jessica about that?
Suddenly it links back to me, and it's like, I can't give you any more ideas. People hate me.
Right? With the
Did you
AI.
know... Okay, I know you probably haven't seen the Terminator 2
Sorry,
movie.
your face was... maybe a long time ago.
There's a part where he has to the bad Terminator, because Arnie is a good guy in that movie. Good guy. He's a good guy, but the bad Terminator has to chase down a motorcycle, and the actor who played the bad Terminator kept outrunning the motorcycle. Like, he was just a really fast runner, so they had to keep slowing him down to film it because he kept catching up. And like, you can't do that. You have to stay behind him.
Right.
So there's your fun fact for the day. I should have saved that as my fact to tell people when I met them. When they came up to me in public and said, aren't you from that podcast?
Well, now you've included it on the podcast. So now you can definitely...
I'll have to write down the...
Yeah,
like,
if you listen to episode 96, you would learn this fun fact about the Terminator.
Yeah, it's 96. That's right. I'll have to get a 96 tattooed on my, like, wrist so that I... Yes.
Yeah. So this has been Dungeons and Dopamine Podcast.
You can listen to us anywhere you stream podcasts, or check us out on YouTube, or both. Why not both?
Why not both? You can also support us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/dungeonsdopamine.
You can find us on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Insta, Reddit, Twitch, and Discord.
Woo!
That's such a list.
Someday
now.
we'll be live even.
Yes, we're thinking.
Sometimes we are live.
Yeah, our 100th episode, we're gonna go live.
Oh, that was Twitch. But yeah. Yay!
We Twitched. We didn't go live. Well, Ryan and I went live and made friends.
Yeah, you did. I didn't. Someday I will.
Yay!
You can also reach out to us on any of those socials, or you can email us at dungeonsdopamine@yahoo.com.
Dungeons and Dopamine is edited and published by Argyle Pigeon Productions.
Yay!
Yay! Okay, that's all.
We do appreciate him, even if we don't tell him.
We don't tell him. Makes him...
We wouldn't.
I was going to say
be
selfish, but I meant stuck up. Telling
it
him...
makes him selfish when we tell him nice
selfish.
things about him.
Ugh.
He's such a jerk.
Yeah, he's so selfish. He's so shellfish. Okay, and that's what we'll leave you with. I'm not cutting that out. Okay, love you, bye.
I love you, bye!